last day, and the whole 9 yards. Well, these Ottawa Indians had been accumulating rifles over time, trading for them, maybe finding them, maybe stealing them, maybe killing for them, I don't know. But they were accumulating rifles. Rifles are great, but if you don't have any ammunition, it becomes a problem. So they were upset because the British, they requested that the British supply them with ammunition for their rifles. They didn't want it necessarily for free, but they wanted ammunition. Now, the British were a little apprehensive about that, because what would they be afraid of? Another French and Indian War type thing? Yeah. So they weren't real eager to give them ammunition, and that upset the Ottawa Indians. What's sacred to Indians? Let's see how much you know about it before we get after it. A couple things are their religion is very sacred. What else is very sacred to them? Their homelands, animals. In some extent, that's true. But what do they really? What is very sacred to them? Their what? What'd you say? Don't be bashful. Did you say ceremony? Oh, what is that? Another word for it?
Oh, their ancestors.
Well, every Sunday you go to
Religion.
their religion, sacred religious grounds where they bury their tribes, etc. Their hunting grounds were also sacred, but their religious grounds, where their burial grounds, their hunting grounds are sacred. And Native Americans don't believe anybody owns the land, but they believe that everybody has right to use it to a point. What's coming west of the Appalachians that's going to upset them? What? So just say it. What? Not colonies. We're going to stay with the 13 for a while. But what's coming west of the Appalachians?
British.
Well, what kind of British? No.
Settlers?
Doing what?
Missionaries.
Well, some hunting, some missionary. But what's the main thing? These
Building houses.
to build what?
To build
What they can do for a living over there?
farm.
Farm. Very good. They were very concerned that colonial farmers would cross the Appalachians and start settling their sacred religious grounds and hunting grounds. They were concerned they were going to be overrun by people moving westward. This would be the first concern, because that's going to be westward expansion is going to go on for a long time, and we'll talk more about that way down the line. Now, the British government listened to these three concerns that the Ottawa Indians had, but they didn't act on any of them. And it made the Ottawa Indian tribes very, very resentful toward Native Americans, toward the government. So what these tribes did, they were so upset they banded together. They all got together. All these different Ottawa tribes got together. And when you get together, you need some leadership, don't you? You need somebody to lead you in your protest. And the man that was chosen by the Ottawa Indians they would band together with would be Chief Pontiac. So these Ottawa Indians are very upset. And what they do is they band together into one tribe, kind of like all the Native American tribes did when they descended on General George Armstrong Custer. Who did they band under? Anybody know? Who did the Cheyenne and Sioux Indians band under before they destroyed George Custer at Little Bighorn? Sitting Bull. Okay, well, the Ottawa Indians did the same thing. They banded together and they went under the leadership of Chief Pontiac. I believe he's on your ID sheet. Now, what Chief Pontiac and his followers did is they destroyed nearly all the British forts that were in the western lands. In protest that the British wouldn't listen to their concerns, Chief Pontiac got a little radical, and he and his warriors destroyed most of the British forts that were stationed in the western lands. What are forts stationed for, by the way? Why do they have forts along the Bozeman Trail in the 50s and 60s, etc.? Why do they do? What are forts sitting there for? Fort Phil Kearny. Anybody been there? Fort Phil Kearny. We're going to go there. We're going to go there. It's by Sheridan. Why is that fort there? Why would they have a fort by Sheridan, Wyoming for? Huh? Stop, and they're protected on their way west. Well, these British forts were set up to protect these colonists that were moving west into these Native American lands. Well, what did Pontiac do? He destroyed them. Now, the British didn't like this. And they referred to the actions on the part of Chief Pontiac and the Ottawa Indians, they called it Pontiac's conspiracy. That's what the British called this action by Chief Pontiac and his Native American supporters. They called it Pontiac's conspiracy. Now, if you think about the Ottawa Indians on this, did they have a beef? Did they believe the colonists had any claims to that land? Why not? Because they were what? The first to settle it, right? They were the first ones there. Well, what resulted? You think everybody just stood by and said, that's fine, they just talked it out? No. Violence occurred in the Western lands, and the British Parliament, which would be like their Congress back in England, were getting a little bit concerned that they have all this uprising in the Western lands. So violence continues in the Western lands between Chief Pontiac, his Ottawa Indians, and settlers. This is just the prelude of what's going to happen over in Wyoming and Montana when people start moving westward in the 1850s and 60s. It led to the Fort Laramie Treaty, led to a lot of problems, led to the Battle of Little Bighorn, all this. This is just the start of this, okay? So Parliament is alarmed, and they believe they better put a policy together to get this thing under control. Well, who's the policy going to be discussed by? It's going to be between King George, not so much, he wasn't much of a leader, but Parliament, and who's going to put this policy together? Parliament and the Indians? They're going to sit down? No. Who's going to be part of that policy making? The American colonists. Okay, well what happened, unfortunately, is the British government and the American colonists could not agree on what policy to apply on lands west of the Appalachian Mountains. They couldn't agree on it. Because Parliament was very ineffective. Anybody know what time this period is? I'm ready to use this.
47.
Okay, perfect. We're just about perfect. Okay, so Parliament was very weak at this time because they had what? We talked about they had uneducated guys that couldn't solve any problems. They had a bad king. Parliament was bad. And so when Parliament sat down with the colonists and said, hey man, we got to come up with a policy that's going to get these Indians under control west of the Appalachians, they couldn't get it. It was a mess. Well, finally, late in 1763, Parliament is given a new prime minister who's going to be really good and solve a lot of problems, and his name is going to be George Grenville. Okay? So Parliament, the people of Great Britain, elect late in 1763 a new prime minister of Parliament. His name will be George Grenville. And what we're going to do when we get back Monday is we're going to talk about how George Grenville helped solve, listen up, helped solve those 4 problems we talked about. Now I want to mention this so you know. What's the difference between a king and a prime minister? What's the difference in that? We can't give you a thing. The difference between a king and a prime minister. King is royalty. King is royalty. Lots of times the kings are only involved if they need to be, and the prime minister is responsible, like you said, to get the parliament going. Okay? Do we have royalty in the United States? No, we have a president of the United States which would be equal to a prime minister. We just don't have royalty. So George Grenville is going to have a lot more say in how these problems get solved than King George III. Does that make sense? And he's going to do a good job. Okay? All right, that's it for today. If you guys are, what's that? Oh, that's the 11.